Okay, just bear with me while I get everything up on the screen that I need. Okay, yes, we've got that one ready. Okay, what I need is just to minimize me. All right, and shut down the Facebook group so there's not a echo. Okay, nearly there. Sorry, guys, bear with me still. Okay. And of course, we have the lawn-mowing people right outside my window, right as I am speaking. Okay, I'm just going to check the Facebook group, see if it's all working in there now. Okay, great. Let's see. All right, if it is showing up, hopefully it is showing up. Okay, so sorry there's been such a delay this morning. We've had a mix-up with times. I was scheduled in at 2 o'clock today and Jules, I think, was in at 2 o'clock tomorrow. So there was just a bit of an accident there. And then I couldn't get on. So anyway, thank you everybody for all your support with this group and our book launch. And now the summit. I hope you've enjoyed all of the masterclasses that have come so far, and we are only halfway through. So yes, I'm still just not sure if this is working. It should be. Anyway, I will just continue on. Yes, so anyway, make sure you say hi. If you're there, say hi, please. I will check the group to see if it is on and working. And let's see, it's working. Yes, thank you, Tash, for letting me know that. I can't see anything in the group just yet. All right, that's fantastic. So if anyone is here joining me, please put a hashtag live in the comments. And if you're going to watch on the replay later, pop a hashtag replay. That'll be great just to know who has been watching live, who is here. I will hopefully be able to see your comments or questions as we go along. And I'd like to just start by asking you a few questions. So even though I can't see you, please just follow on with this little exercise. So raise your hand if you would like to know how to kickstart your way to optimal health. And raise your hand if you'd like a process that's easy to follow where you get totally supported to make changes. And raise your hand if you would like to know exactly what supplements you can take and the foods to eat to help you achieve this. Now, would you agree that maintaining good health is getting harder and harder? And would you agree that our lives are so busy that we often don't prioritise our health? And would you agree that a lot of us need support to achieve great health? In case you haven't met me before, my name's Kirsty Bednar, previously Kirsty Mason before I was married. 22 years ago, I began my naturopathic studies. 17 years ago, I started my naturopathic career up in Foster on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. And 5 years ago, I opened my clinic, Empower You Natural Health, here in Newcastle. So I come before you today as a naturopath with over 17 years of clinical experience. And I guess I consider myself to be a health transformation strategist. And I'll tell you what really lights me up is watching people's lives change for the better when they learn the tools to improve their health. You see, over the years, I've had the good fortune of helping thousands of people regain their health and happiness. And I've also been blessed to have recovered myself from severe digestive problems, asthma, allergies, alcoholism, addictions, bulimia, anxiety, all through what I've learned through natural medicines and nutrition. And during this time, I've discovered that there's three main problems people come up against with trying to improve their health. One is not knowing the correct food and supplements to take. 2, people are often too stressed and busy to prioritise their health. 3, there's so much conflicting health information out there and it causes too much confusion and overwhelm. What this means for you is if you can pick up some of the tools I'll be sharing with you, you'll have greater clarity as to what you need to do to reach your health potential. And my promise to you is this: in the next 50 minutes or so, you'll pick up the tools you can use to gain a greater understanding about your health, and you'll discover new and easy ways to achieve the best health possible. Before we get into that though, I'd like to share with you something I've noticed about people who love to learn and create incredible success in life. 1, they give themselves permission to be something greater each and every day. 2, they take action on inspired thoughts. 3, they're willing to invest in themselves. 4, they make decisions quickly. And 5, they're always open to new ideas and new ways of thinking. Now, if you were with me in 1996, you would find yourself in the lounge room of a 2-bedroom unit at Cronulla Beach, New South Wales, Australia. You'd notice that I was 10 kilos heavier, puffy, bloated. My hair looked and felt like straw. I had extremely dark circles under my eyes, and I was constantly sick with asthma and allergies. I lived on antihistamines and pseudoephedrine. I needed several puffs of my asthma reliever daily, and a few times a year I was bedridden for weeks at a time with chest infections, needing nebulizer, steroids, antibiotics to breathe whenever I got a flu. I had constant digestive problems and gut pain, and my anxiety was so bad at times I could barely leave the unit to walk to the shops to buy groceries. You see, I was using food, cigarettes, and alcohol to try to mask how I was feeling. And everything I was doing to help me cope was part of the reason I was so sick. I ended up getting to my lowest point Christmas Eve of that year, when I knew I couldn't keep living like that. I knew this was not the life I wanted at just 17 and a half. I'd always felt I had a bigger purpose for being here. That night, I prayed to God for help and resolved to do whatever it would take to create a better life and to be healthy. And my journey to self-healing began. First, I gave up drinking alcohol and using any mind-altering substances. And from that night to this day, I haven't had a drink or drug. Of course, that's not necessary for everyone to do, but for me and my addictive nature, it was all or nothing. I believe, at least for myself, that it's this total abstinence of alcohol and mind-altering substances that leads me to the ultimate in clarity, and also always being forced to work on my shit without having any drug-induced anesthesia to suppress my feelings. Now, around that time, I was doing some work experience at a gym, and I was drawn to a brochure on the wall for a naturopathic college. I had no idea what a naturopath was, but there was a beautiful dolphin on the cover of this brochure, and I just absolutely gravitated towards it. So I felt that this was a path I needed to take. And this feeling was so powerful that I found out everything I needed to do to go to this particular college. I spent the next 3 years working in hospitality to save enough money for my first semester's fees and my first little car so I could drive there. And I started seeing a homeopath to get my health on track, and then other natural health practitioners followed from then. The effort soon showed its fruits. As my body, spirit, and mind got onto its healing path, the universe responded accordingly and brought great teachers into my life. And there came some very profound books I read over the next 2 years, sparking my own healing journey and opening me up to universal truths I deeply resonated with. Since then, I've recovered my health, my happiness, my enjoyment of life, finding my purpose and what I'm here for, and every day grateful I get to do what I love. Of course, I'm not done. Life is a constant work in progress. I'm learning every day my mission to create the ultimate health for myself and others. So it's because of my own health journey and deciding to learn about natural medicine that I'm able to share my knowledge and experience with you, because it's my mission in life to help people create their best health possible. Now, you are in the right place here with me now if you want to know more about how you can optimize your physical health quickly and easily. So my topic I wanted to talk to you today about is about cleansing the physical body for spiritual ascension. Now, as people are moving into their energetic light bodies more, their physical bodies also need to align with the new earth in order to really evolve and elevate fully. I want to bring the focus to our physical bodies and what foundations you can put in place to achieve optimal health, so you can increase your consciousness and connection to source, aligning your physical bodies with your spiritual expansion. I'll share with you a little later about how you can join my 2-week health reset program to help you reboot your health and get you started. Now, naturopathic principles and treatment can help you keep your body clean to be able to better connect to source, your own higher self, and intuition. If we can find natural ways that support and accelerate our body's innate healing ability, instead of our society's instant gratification mindset and a pill for every ill model. If we can move away from using synthetic laboratory-derived chemicals that, while take away symptoms, by no means promote healing, but also keep us shut off from the source energy. Every time we take a pharmaceutical to suppress our symptoms, such as to lower a fever, dry up nasal congestion, suppress a cough, etc., we're working against nature and prolonging our body's ability to heal. There are so many natural ways we can support our immune systems to resist disease and to help our bodies fight illness. If we can use illness and symptoms as a guide to show us what is out of balance, and then just use gentle natural remedies that support the body to heal, and look to where we need to change our lifestyle. Example, if we need to rest more, get more sleep, eat better, move our body more, get more time in nature, reduce our stress, do our inner work to integrate and release unconscious emotions and patterns that keep us stuck. I believe that if we can do our best at keeping our bodies clean and pure, then this reflects our mind and spirit. It helps us to be more connected and in tune with ourselves, truly feeling everything, not anesthetizing ourselves or being distracted by constant symptoms, ill health or pain. In this state, we're more likely to know what is truth and what is the matrix. Now, there's 5 main pillars to health that I help people implement, and I'll be able to share a bit about 3 of those today. So I might just sort of have a look and see where everyone's at. If you've got any questions so far or comments, if it does show up, and let's have a look. Okay, yes, we've just got some highs so far, so no questions, but please pop in questions. I will pop over and have a look from time to time and try and answer those for you. So I'll get sort of stuck into talking to you a bit about these foundations or pillars, I like to call them. So the first thing is the importance of our nutrition. So what we're eating, that's probably the biggest thing that has an impact on us, and the biggest thing, I guess, that we can control as well. So, I really like to really just get across the importance of eating organic foods. There's a few reasons. So we want to eat organic, not just to reduce our pesticide burden, which we really need to do that too. So there's many pesticides sprayed in our foods. They have all sorts of effects in our bodies, and particularly with disrupting our hormones, which I guess a lot of people don't know. A lot of pesticides attach onto our estrogen receptors, sort of mimic estrogen, and they're just a cause of so many founding problems with hormone and reproductive disorders. So there's a list of, I don't know if you've seen this, the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. So there's a environmentalworkinggroup.org, EWG.org, always updates a list of the most pesticide sprayed foods, and then the foods with the least amount of pesticides. So you can actually go onto the website and check out that list. That list doesn't change too much. So I've got a few older ones from a couple of years ago that I will generally share with my clients. But yes, so it's like, if you can't afford to buy everything organic, then you want to really concentrate on those Dirty Dozen ones, is to avoid those or make sure you're getting those organic. So the other reason for the importance of organic foods is that when plants are not sprayed with pesticides, they have to develop their own phytochemicals to resist pest and disease. And it's those phytochemicals. So when we eat those plants have these super phytochemicals that they've had to make to protect them, and that protects us. So that protects our cells. It helps our cells. It stops our cells mutating and causing any damage, and helps our cells repair. So these phytochemicals are just absolutely have superpowers. So if we can get as many of those in, so that's how unsprayed fruits and vegetables are going to have these phytochemicals. The other thing is about eating foods that are close to like picked as fresh as possible, or picked as close to their ripe state as possible. It's only when our fruits and vegetables are in that riper state that they're at their maximum nutritional content. So if we're picking foods, 2 weeks before they're ripe, and then we're just letting them ripen, then they weren't at their maximum nutritional state. So that's why shopping at places like your local farmers markets, or like, belonging to an organic co-op, something like that, where you're getting your foods delivered pretty much the day they're picked, or if not the day after. That is the most ideal way we can be eating our foods. The other part is, looking at the meat. So if we do eat meat, and there's obviously varying opinions on whether we should eat meat or shouldn't. I sort of stick to, I guess, no opinion specifically on that at all, except what's good for the person. So I tend to be a real believer in that we are all individuals and we know what's right for our bodies too. And if we can tap into that sort of more intuitive eating and know what we need. So I find, just in practice, some people absolutely thrive without any animal protein at all. Some people don't. So it's about, the individual again. But my advice around, if we are to eat animal products, is that we're eating meat that is ethically sourced, that is raised organically. And hopefully even knowing the farm it comes from. And that's another great thing about your local farmers markets. You can talk to the farmers direct. You can ask them questions. That sort of, that meat you're eating has been raised ethically, and it's up the road, somewhere up in the Hunter Valley or somewhere close by. So I think if we're going to eat animal protein, and it doesn't need to be a lot, I think that's the thing, is people think, if you're a meat eater, you eat massive amounts of meat. What I sort of believe is a good balance is if we have that meat a few times a week, portion size is like the size of the palm of your hand by the thickness, that's all we want to consume. And you might consume that 2 to 3 times a week. And it's not the basis, it's not the most amount of your meal. So this is where you probably want like 3 to 4 times as much in veggies. So if you're, about a quarter of your plate size can be that animal protein, and then 3 to 4 times that amount in your fruits, in your vegetable, in your plant foods, I should say. And also, we want good fats with that. We want a little bit of good complex carbohydrate, so that can be in the form of starchy veggies, so like our sweet potato. It might be in the form of some healthy grains, such as quinoa or some brown rice, for instance. So we just want that balance of the animal proteins. And fish is another thing. Look, our oceans are really toxic now, and I actually have one teacher that is really staunch on this. I'm not quite there myself yet, but she is an absolute advocate of not touching anything out of the ocean because it is so polluted. And not just with the mercury. I guess now we've got like radiation spills that circulate around the globe, but plastics, it's all those microplastics that are in the fish. So when we eat fish, we're consuming those microplastics. So anyway, that's a little bit doom and gloom, but it's just to give you an idea that our oceans are pretty overloaded with poisons, really. And so with fish, I tend to be personally, and what I recommend to my clients is I don't know if you've seen any of you guys that are Newcastle based, you might know of the Newcastle farmers markets at Broadmeadow Showground, and there's Nicole in the shed. She is a supplier of the Regal and the Aura salmon, and it's from New Zealand, and it's a biodynamic fish farm. So that means the fish aren't fed any GMO grains or products or food. They're not given any antibiotics. what else? It's in like the pristine waters. It's not Milford Sounds, but it's one of those. It's one of the other sounds. So it's in beautiful, clean water, and fish are not given any nasties. So that's kind of like the best of what you can have. So I recommend sort of eating that salmon, Regal or Aura salmon. It can be purchased. I mean, I've seen it in Melbourne, so it can be purchased, I'm sure, around Australia. And then also when she has her wild caught snapper is absolutely to die for. So I tend to only really stick to those fish. Tinned salmon actually is also wild caught Alaskan salmon, most tinned red salmon. And I sort of go, that's okay as well. Although, of course, we try and avoid as much as we can out of tins. But again, we live in a world where we need to, have the convenience of food as well. So I give a bit of leeway there with the tin food in moderation. So a bit of tinned red salmon, that is an option for having good wild caught salmon, Alaskan salmon too. So yeah, that's a little bit about sort of the animal products, the eggs, we tend to stick to obviously just organic where you can get them, or if you know someone who's got chooks and you can get their eggs, that's awesome as well. We want to have low inflammatory foods, so often, naturopaths are, a bit renowned for saying, get off your gluten and get off your dairy, but there's good reason for that. So gluten as a grain has a protein in it that is very inflammatory to our gut. And so they've found a substance in the blood, almost 2 decades now, they've sort of found this information out, is that there's a substance in our gut called zonulin. And when we have increased amounts shown of this zonulin, it actually causes leaky gut in our intestine. So it opens up those tight junctions in the intestine. So when we have leaky gut, we basically have endotoxins and particles of food that can cross that gut wall into our bloodstream, and that sets up an inflammatory reaction. So that sets up sort of our immune cells go, oh, hey, these things shouldn't be in here. These foreign objects shouldn't be able to get through into the blood. So we need to mount a response. And so we have about 70% of our immune cells in our gut tissue. And if you think about it, that's that most common entry point that foreign things or pathogens are going to get inside us is through our digestive route. So it makes sense, that we have this big defense system in our gut. So if we are eating these foods that are continually damaging that gut lining, and what I was just coming back to with the gluten protein is that eating gluten stimulates this zonulin protein to be secreted. So it's not even if we have a sensitivity to gluten, it just happens in everybody temporarily. So it opens those tight junctions for about 4 to 6 hours after eating gluten. So if you imagine though, most people's diets probably contain gluten foods every 4 to 6 hours. They might be having something that's gluten containing at breakfast and lunch and dinner, possibly even snacks. So there might be gluten all day long. And so that is keeping that gut wall in that leaky, permeable state to allow those toxins to pass through into our bloodstream. So there's good reason why we as naturopaths try and have a period of time off gluten, because we want to heal our gut. The thing is, though, a lot of people find that they feel really good off gluten and they end up staying off it. And it needs to be done with guidance. It's not just about cutting the gluten out of your diet and then substituting it with all of those gluten-free products. There's so much processed gluten-free food options out there that's not always healthy too. It's more about cutting out the gluten and then eating in a different way, I'd say. So instead of just going, okay, cut out the bread, let's go your gluten-free bread, you might just eat more like a poke bowl or a Buddha bowl, something like that, where you've got your mix of your quinoa, your brown rice, you've got maybe some kale, you've got some roasted pumpkin, maybe some tempeh or some chicken or some salmon or tofu, maybe some beans in there and some seeds, some avocado, Yes, so it's eating in a different way, rather than having, the typical standard Australian diet, of a sandwich, say. Most people are kind of in that frame where, typically they have a cereal for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch. Dinner's often okay, it's usually kind of meat and vegetables or some kind of protein and vegetables. So that's not too bad. But I find the breakfast and the lunches like the real challenge for people. The thing with dairy protein as well is that the casein part of dairy protein is really hard for us to digest as humans. We're not cows, so cows being such a big animal, their protein molecules are so large that it makes it really hard for us to break them down. So it's not just a matter of, lactose intolerance. A lot of people get that confused. They think that, if I cut out the dairy, it means I can have lactose-free products, or it just means I'm lactose intolerant. Lactase is the enzyme needed to break down the sugar lactose in milk. So a lot of us sort of reduce that production of lactase by the time we're about 7 years old. It's something we have when we're young. It's something we have, to be breastfed, and just growing, up until we're 7. And that kind of is that's another topic in itself, but that almost tells us too that we actually, the ideal time for breastfeeding can potentially even be up to 7 years of age. But that's so shunned upon in kind of a lot of, a lot of our Western cultures. So yes, back to the dairy. The protein molecules are really large to digest and break down, and that in itself is very inflaming to the system. So dairy protein not only affects our gut inflammation, the gluten does this too, but also affects our brains. It's really interesting that casein, that protein I was talking about in dairy, it attaches to the opioid receptors in our brains. So it literally acts like a drug. And so when we withdraw from it or go off dairy foods, for instance, it is like withdrawing from a drug. And I find this in clinic, in practice, when we're working through diet changes, when we might be, doing a food sensitivity test, for instance. I do an immune blood test to test what people's food intolerances are. People that absolutely love cheese will go, oh my God, I just pray it's not cheese. Just please don't let it be cheese. And lo and behold, dairy is, a big food intolerance for them, but they've become addicted to it. So there is this, balance between intuitive eating in the sense of like cravings. If we're getting cravings for certain things, that can be not because of intuition, but because of an allergy or an addiction to it as well. So we've got to sort of discern, the difference between, is our body craving this because it really needs it? If our body is craving like lots of alkalizing veggies, or certain fruits, or a bit of an animal, we haven't had much animal protein. It's coming up for a female to that time of the month, and they feel like they do need a bit of meat in their diet coming up to that. I feel that that's intuition. But when people are like, I just have to have my cheese, and I just have to have my bread, and I have to have, whatever the inflaming foods are, that's not intuition speaking. I believe that's addiction speaking. And it's how these foods react with our brain. It's like the sugar, we don't have an actual need for sugar. We don't have, there's kind of no need. So there's no off switch. There isn't an off switch, and it really promotes addiction. It's the way these things work in our brain, or trigger these chemicals in our brains that cause the addiction to the substance. So it's not always a matter of sort of moderation with some things. It's like, if we can get rid of it to heal the inflammation, to heal the gut, and to pretty much just cut out that addiction. And then we find that we're feeling so much better. We're feeling so much clearer. Our digestive system is feeling so much better that often people just don't want to bring it back in. I like to sort of be in a bit more moderation with things where people are in a state for it. And it can take a long time for people's guts to heal. Like, in all honesty, leaky gut can take a good 18 months to 2 years to properly heal. So it's not a matter of like, okay, let's go off the gluten for 6 weeks, although I tend to do that, and then you're okay. It's more about then trialing. So it's like you bring it back in, okay, is that triggering some more symptoms? We're not ready yet. So, you know, we keep it out for the long term until things are really healed. And then what I suggest about then that consumption of gluten containing products, it's just the avoidance of processed wheat that I'm more concerned about. Wheat is really heavily sprayed with the carcinogen glyphosate. So we really want to avoid any processed inorganic wheat. Wheat too has been heavily changed over the last 2 to 3 decades. So it is no longer what it used to be. It's actually kind of bred to contain a much higher yield of gluten to make it soft and fluffy and addictive, really. So I prefer to eat, make sure your grains are organic and that you're eating ancient grains, you know, so that would be spelt, kamut, and khorasan and rye even. So they're kind of your better grains to consume, but generally most of our guts are in a state where we can do with that temporary removal altogether of gluten and that casein protein from dairy products. We really don't need it. If people are okay, there's occasionally I find people that don't really have any problem with dairy, and in that case I would suggest to have just your raw milk. So we can actually obtain much more easily now is like a raw cold pressed milk, and from particular cows too. It's from the Jersey cows that produce the A2 protein, not the A1 protein. So you might find, I think Harris Farm definitely has it, but even Coles has this raw cold pressed milk nowadays from Jersey cows. So it's eating food in its unprocessed state as much as possible, keeping away from those inflammatory foods, eating organic wherever possible, eating your ethically raised forms of animal foods, avoiding all your processed foods. So anything that's in a package, that's going to contain usually like your bad fats, like your trans fats. It's going to be often high in sugar or sodium. So we really want to avoid those things. They're extremely damaging. They age our cells faster. They inflame our system. They cause, you know, problems with our brain, definitely, you know, problems with our gut. The other things we want to do is to avoid caffeine as much as possible and alcohol as much as possible. So when I'm doing sort of my 2-week health reset, it's essentially like a cleanse or a detox. And we are just stripping the diet back to really clean, pure forms of food. So we get a break. Our whole digestive system gets a break. Our gut gets to heal. Our liver gets a break from processing all these toxins. And that's how we can kind of renew our vitality again and just restart our health and clean the slate. I like to use the metaphor that doing a cleanse or a detox is like clearing the mud off the windscreen. So it's not the thing that fixes everything. And this is what I do want to get across, is that doing a 2-week cleanse is not going to fix a major health crisis. You know, it's not going to fix a long standing issue, but it is a way to really accelerate getting on the path to finding out what you need to do to help that issue. So when I'm in clinic working with clients, I might do this process, but it's a really slow, drawn out process that can take maybe 3 months. So I'm kind of where I'm seeing a need for this is that people fall off track. You know, if we don't get results fast, you know, we're all a bit impatient and our lives are really busy and we want results fast. So while yes, this you know, embracing this way of life is a long-term process. It's a forever journey. It's a lifetime. However, if we can really accelerate the implementation of making these changes to then get to where we want to be with our health, I think that's sort of the gap where I could see where people were kind of falling off. So I've put it into a format of like 2 weeks where it's not just sending you on your way to go, okay, eat these foods, stay away from these foods and take these supplements and, see you in a month. What I've found with that is so much of that doesn't work unless you're a really, really dedicated, disciplined person. But even the most good intentioned, disciplined people fall off the wagon too without that support. So what I find, and how I've actually, worked this out for myself and how I best operate too, is I've been involved in quite a few programs, over the years. I've been involved in a few of late that have helped immensely. And I find whenever I'm like in a group setting where other people are doing the same thing as me, so it's like 2 or more people heading for the same goal, I find there's just so much power in that. It's like it does accelerate your growth. So being supported, being in a like-minded group of people all trying to achieve the same things, I think it just advances it all and helps us achieve it even better than if left to our own devices. So that's why I feel that doing something in this sort of group container over a fortnight, and a fortnight too is, I find, the reason, yes, 2 weeks is not a long time, to make big changes, but I've structured this in a way that we can do a lot in 2 weeks. Essentially, we're going to work on all those 5 pillars to get down pat in your diet, in your life, because it's not just diet's just one of those pillars. But if we can work on all of those, like help you to implement those over the 2 weeks, you can go away and continue the journey. So it's not that, that 2 weeks is the be all, but it's a huge start in helping you to actually implement the changes that, like I said, can take my clients months to implement. Yes, so that's sort of why I like to do it in this way. So a couple of other, I'm just having a look at things I wanted to touch on now. Another thing that is super important, it might be something that you can just go away from today and do, I think this is a really good exercise, is we need about 40 different plant foods a day to maintain like a really good diversity with our gut microbiome. So it's not so much about always the types of bugs we have, but the diversity. There's still so much that we don't know about the microbiome. We don't essentially know exactly what bugs constitute a healthy gut. Like there's lots and lots of studies that are always coming out around showing that this bug has an association or correlation with, a good health outcome, or this bug has an association with a bad health outcome. So we're getting more and more understanding of the different bugs, but there are so many bugs. So yes, what I want to say about that more is that we just want to feed our flora the right stuff so they can be in a state of balance. So we don't have to necessarily manipulate that. If we have a certain health condition, yes, we can take certain probiotics for certain therapeutic benefits. We have got researched probiotic strains, for instance, that are really helpful at dampening down eczema and allergies, at improving how our immune system resists infections, colds and flus. We've got probiotic strains that help reduce irritable bowel syndrome and bowel inflammation. We've got research strains that help our brain function, that help increase our resilience, that reduce anxiety even. And there's also research strains that help us to better manage our weight and kind of metabolic symptoms or issues like with cholesterol and high blood sugar and so on. So there's definitely a lot that we do know, but there's a lot I think we don't know. So I just like to advise people to say we need about 40 different plant foods a day. A week. A week. Sorry, that is a bit challenging to get 40 different plant foods in a day, but 40 different plant foods in a week, that is really ideal to help keep that large diversity of our microbes. And what we do know is that a good diversity is associated with better health outcomes and less disease. So if we can just work on feeding our good bugs, that's what we want to do. And feeding those good bugs is going to keep our pathogenic and bad bugs in a good range. It's not about not having any of those pathogens, because everything works symbiotically, everything works together. And this is something that we're understanding about the microbiome now as well, is that, you know, people might do a stool test, for instance, with their doctor, and they show up that they've got a parasite. You know, blastocystis hominis is one of the most common ones that we see. And it depends so much what symptoms are going on for that person as to whether you actually need to try and kill off that bug. I don't like the real kill approach. I like the reduction. I like the gentle reduction. So I will use more gentle herbs that reduce the load, if you like, of that pathogen, while we're using sort of prebiotic foods and fibers to build up our good bacteria, our good bugs. So it's not necessarily about, oh my God, I have a parasite, that's the cause of my whole issue. It never is. Things, our health, our body, nature is way too complex for this sort of black and white approach. And that's sort of the approach that medicine uses as well. It's kind of like the, you know, the germ theory. It's like it was, what was it in the, late 1700s, maybe 1800s, that the germ theory was discovered, which is a total farce as well, because the person who discovered the germ theory, Louis Pasteur, at about the same time, there was another man called Antoine Beauchamp, and he was talking at the time about the terrain theory. So we had these sort of two, I don't know, doctors, researchers, scientists, you know, kind of side by side, having completely opposite views on the theory of disease, really. So Louis Pasteur's theory about the germ theory is that, you know, it's finding that actual virus, that bug, that parasite, that pathogen that is the cause of disease. And if you kill that bug, virus, pathogen, or parasite, the condition is going to go away. And we know that that's not the case. But in that time, that's the theory they went with. And a big part of that, again, was like the corruption of the pharmaceutical industry. You could make an antibiotic. That's about when antibiotics became, you know, started to be developed. So, you know, there was money in that. There's money in making a drug that's going to kill off, you know, these pathogens. And that's the cause of all disease. And taking this drug is going to get you better. The really interesting part is that when Louis Pasteur was on his deathbed, he actually said, I retract everything. I retract all my research. The terrain is everything. Now, yeah, that is just like phenomenal. So even Louis Pasteur retracted his theory, his research, and went with Antoine Beauchamp's theory of the terrain. The terrain is everything. And that is what we go by, naturopathic principles. It's building, you know, the terrain is the environment, you know, the terrain is the forest, it's the rainforest. So we want to have all of the things in place that lead to good growth of and good resistance. So it's not about just killing off the pathogens in the gut. It's making sure we're feeding up the good pathogens. It's lowering the load. Yeah, so it's totally dependent on the individual symptoms. It's never just this, you know, black and white approach. And that's I guess that's the importance of, you know, seeing a health professional too about these issues. There's so much information on the internet that a lot of people do try and treat themselves so much. You know, the amount of seminars, webinars, congresses, education. You know, I've been in this industry for 20 plus years and practicing for 17 of those. And every year there's like 3 massive congresses that we attend, you know, that are like 2-3 days long each, with it, we're presenting all the latest research in, you know, different topics. So we have about 3 of those a year. Plus there's just a never ending amount of webinars, you know, to keep up with, and seminars and trainings and so on. So, you know, as a health professional, you know, we are at the sort of, I guess, top of our game at being able to advise people on the right thing for their system. So anyway, that's my little spiel about the gut microbiome and the terrain and the germs. What I wanted to share with you, I'm going to share my screen with you. This is a really cool little infographic that I have got about detoxing. So this is really cool. all right, so obviously we live in an environment where we can't get away from toxicity, and we need to somehow offset that. So I like to say, give people like a toxicity checklist. This is, you know, a bit tongue in cheek here, but if you drink water, if you eat food, and if you breathe air, then you are toxic. We can't get away from it. It is massively in our environment, and it's not to be doom and gloom about things, because I do find that, you know, I was at a environmental toxicity symposium a few years ago, and yeah, I came away from that pretty devastated with learning about what's in our environment and the effects that that's having on us. But it's not about that. It's about doing, like everything, you know, we kind of, you know, we learn about something new or like this, it's affecting us, and we can get pretty overwhelmed and pretty down about, you know, and kind of a bit in that state of, oh, what's the point? You know, I can't change this. I can't change what's in, you know, in the environment. But the important part is focusing on the changes that you can make. So if you can, the things that you can control, for instance, is looking at all of your personal care products, all of your skin products, all of your cleaning, you know, household cleaning products. If you can look at all of those things, and that's another really cool exercise I get people to do, is to make a list of everything that you are putting on your body. So, you know, your makeup, your shampoos, perfumes, body lotions, you know, all of these things, make a list of all of that. Just see how many goes into putting, you know, to what goes on our bodies. And it's a really interesting exercise to do, because a lot of people are really shocked at how much they go, oh, I only use a couple of things, or, you know, most of my stuff's natural. But if you make that list, have a look at where you can change to a more natural product, or where you're putting extra chemicals in your system where you don't need to. Another little sort of tip I have is that if you can't eat it, don't put it on your skin. And that means our skin is permeable. Our skin absorbs everything. So yes, we want to be really mindful of being able to, that's something we can control. We absolutely can control. And we're so fortunate now that there's so many products available that actually are all chemical free and easy to access, easy to get nowadays. A lot of the skincare, makeup ranges, even your beauticians, you know, you find your organic natural beauticians, you can get a range of, you know, lovely skincare products. Like you used to only be able to get the real cheap, natural, chemical free stuff, and it wasn't always that great for your skin. But you know, there's so much better products, a lot better things we can get nowadays. There was also a study, and I tried to find this so I could just give you a bit more detail about it, but essentially, there was a study done on young males that were using just all your standard body products. So it might have been aftershaves, what else? Smelly body washes, Lynx deodorant, you know, your real smelly spray deodorants, shampoos, body lotions. So a range of sort of those fragrant products. Now, anything with a fragrance in it contains phthalates, and phthalates are really awful endocrine disruptors, meaning hormone imbalance, causing hormone imbalance. So these men's sperm was tested, and it was found to pretty much be nil, like they had no sperm. So they took them off all these products, sort of detoxed them really. And I can't remember the time frame. This is what I was trying to get for you, but I think it was only a matter of weeks that they retested them and they were getting their sperm levels back to normal. So, I mean, that's a lucky thing, because phthalates is something we can clear relatively quickly. So once you go off these, you know, chemicals in your skincare body products, they're often pretty easy to get out of your system. You need a bit of help, but you need to stay away from them. But there's so many other chemicals in the environment. I don't want to do the doom and gloom thing, that stay in our system for many, many, many years that we can't remove. So what we need to do, we need to offset it. So I recommend that a good specialized professional detoxification plan is implemented at least once a year, if not twice a year. So what we can do with with doing that. You know, we can take phytochemicals and phytonutrients in the way of herbs that can help to repair and offset some of that damage. So that's what I love about this sort of diagram, is it talks about, you know, we can, you know, the hormone disruption that happens from the exposure to these toxins, that we can offset that by, you know, taking a formulation that's got these herbs in it, that's got milk thistle, that's got the ingredient sulforaphane in it, that helps our liver detox pathways work to get rid of these chemicals. You know, we can offset the mitochondrial dysfunction that we get from that toxin exposure. And I think a lot of people are in this mitochondrial dysfunction. Essentially, it just means like we're kind of incapable of producing energy. And a lot of people are in that state. They're in that fatigued state, and it's not, you know, and often it's just the damage that all these things are creating in our bodies that are affecting that production of ATP. ATP is how we make energy. So we can offset that a little bit by exercise. So exercise can actually really improve the state of our mitochondrial health. We can offset inflammation with other herbal phytochemicals like green tea and curcumin. We can offset, so oxidative stress is like the damage that happens to our cells. It's that oxidation process is like when the apple, you know, you cut an apple open and it goes brown, for instance. So that's happening to our cells all the time, but our cells have got, they've got processes, they've got enzymes, they've got sort of chemicals. What I'm trying to say is like, basically just, you know, biochemical processes that repair the cell damage. But what happens is if the damage outweighs our cell's ability to repair, then we get that breakdown, and then that's what's going to age us faster. And so this is where we can offset with extra antioxidants. So we use things like spirulina and N-acetylcysteine in this program to help to offset that oxidative stress. So I love the little bit down the bottom too. If you can read that, I'll make it a little bit bigger and see if we can. Let's see if I can make that bigger. Yes. So down the bottom there, you've got the conditions that are linked to toxicity, and this is environmental toxicity. All those endocrine disorders, the thyroid, breast, endometrial, ovarian cancers, testicular cancers, poor semen quality. This is why it's so important for men and women to detoxify well before they want to try for a baby. You've got metabolic problems like obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, chronic fatigue syndrome, and fibromyalgia. And then we've got our neurological disorders and low IQ there. Like a really interesting thing too at that environmental toxicity symposium I was at a few years ago is they were talking about that the environmental chemicals effect on kids nowadays. And so that kids that were exposed to these environmental chemicals, kids that had a high pesticide load in their urine as well, showed up to have about a reduction of 7 points in their IQ. So that is just scary. And we can change those things. We can get our kids eating organic, you know, so important for our kids to be eating organic. So important for our men and women that are looking to have a baby, so important when you're pregnant, so important when you're breastfeeding, pretty much important at all stages of life to eat organic, if I can stress that enough. So you've got those extra environmental toxins that really contribute to disorders like ADHD and autism, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and motor neuron disease. So we want to offset this because we can't avoid our environment, but we want to focus on what we can change. So we can change what we eat. We can control that. So if we just choose, you know, like all the things we talked about, we can drink filtered water. So that's something that's in our control as well. We can avoid the chemicals that way. We've not only got sort of lots of chemicals in our water, chlorine is a big one, and chlorine is like an antibiotic essentially, a sterilizer, so it kills bugs. So imagine when we drink just normal unfiltered tap water, it's killing off all our good bugs. So, and showering, the other thing that we don't think about is having a filter for your shower. Again, remember that skin, everything that comes in is absorbed through the skin. So if we can filter that water and have clean water and avoid the chlorine as well that way, that is super important. So it's like the water we drink, the food we eat, the body products, avoiding those toxins. An air purifier is another thing that is awesome if we can get one of those, because we have lots of the chemicals that we're exposed to are in the house, our carpets, our couches, our even our clothes. Things are what do you call it, like they're treated with flame retardant chemicals, and those flame retardant chemicals are actually one of the nastiest that never ever leave our system. So yes, it's great to not have carpets and really be mindful of eco-friendly furniture and all that kind of stuff, but sometimes it's unavoidable. So an air purifier is an awesome way. We spend a lot of time in our houses indoors, so if you can invest in an air purifier, that's another way. So those 4 things, you have got control that you can really do. And then, maybe incorporating sort of a professional detox program once or twice a year would really set you up in a great way to be offsetting the exposure that we are getting to these toxins. So I'm going to just stop that share again for a moment. I will share my screen for something else shortly, but I just wanted to share with you. So potentially we're probably coming up to the end of our time, and the other pillar essentially was just the healthy lifestyle that we were talking about. So that's reducing stress. So I probably won't tell you too much about that, other than if we constantly remain in that state of busyness, we're aging faster. We're suppressing our immunity, we're suppressing our digestion, we're causing hormone imbalance. So we're having lots of adverse effects just by being busy. So we don't even have to feel like we're stressed. A lot of people cope really well being busy, they thrive off it. So it's not about the emotional and the mental stress. It's even just that physical busyness that we need to compensate from. So we need to consciously have moments in the day that we are working on bringing those stress hormones down. So that might be breathing technique, and breathing techniques work wonders. Just before I got on this talk today, because of all the throwing a spanner in the works that happened with the time issue, and then my tech stuff was playing up and I couldn't log on, that put my stress off the Richter scale. And Tasha's messaging me going, I want you to take some deep breaths. And you know what? And then my tech worked. So it's pretty amazing it's instantaneous at what taking those deep diaphragmatic breaths does, the deep belly breathing. And it's I like to do an in count for 4 and an out for 6, or an out for 7. It's fine. As long as you're breathing out longer than you're breathing in, that actually really quickly lowers those stress hormones. And another thing with the stress hormones, this is, obviously not related to everybody, but people that are trying to conceive, we can only conceive if our body is just biologically and evolutionary. We won't conceive if we're in a danger environment. So if our bodies sense that we're in danger, it's going to shut all those processes off. So we're not going to be able to conceive. So even though, we're not necessarily feeling like we're in danger, it's just, it's that busy pace of life that's stimulating those stress hormones that's making our body think we are in danger, and that shuts off our reproductive ability. So, meditating, breathing exercises, physical exercise, getting adequate sleep, getting unstructured time, time where we can just potter around. We don't have anything on our plate. We live in such a way that we've got the appointment book kind of built up. There's something on at every moment of the day. So if we can have unstructured time set up in our day, if we can have time in nature, if we can have time, bare feet walking on the ground, if we can get the sun, the sunlight pretty much in the first half hour of waking up in the morning would be great. So practices like that, that's what we kind of go through at making sure that we're implementing in our 2-week reset. So essentially, we really just want to be repleting all our vitamins, minerals. We want to get enough sleep. We want to eat a nutritious diet full of phytochemicals and antioxidants to function well. So, and if we can remove all the things that block our healing, like you know, the synthetic recreational drugs, the excess alcohol, the pharmaceuticals, our food chemicals, our empty, dead processed foods, that our bodies can function the way they're meant to, and our minds and spirits can also function at a higher frequency. So we need to work on all the aspects of our beings. This is physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So pretty much we are just about at our time. I'm sorry, I have rambled and rambled and rambled, and I have not been looking at your comments to answer your questions. So let me just have a little quick squeeze if there's anything really urgent. Sugar is like heroin to me, Deborah. Yes, it so is, isn't it? It's that is exactly what it does in the brain. Oh my gosh. And that's why it's not willpower. You know, people get like so bummed on themselves and think, oh my God, I'm just weak. You're not weak. That's like, you know, our biological design is to get addicted to sugar. So, you know, we literally have to like cut it out altogether to not have that addiction. Okay, so we've got, there was a question from Jess. Hi, Jess. Jess is an old school friend of mine who I haven't seen in years. Is activated charcoal a good detox? So activated charcoal is not necessarily a detox, it's a binder. So if we're stimulating our detox processes, we need to then remove the toxins via our urine or our feces, right? Through wee or poo, essentially. So if we're sort of just stimulating the release by maybe the herbs we're taking, then we need to make sure our bowels are eliminating. The only problem, charcoal can be useful as a binder like that. So it's going to bind toxins that are already like released, but into the gut only. It's not a detoxifier or like of your cells. So what we need to do is we need to take certain herbs or phytochemicals that stimulate the release of the toxins out of the cells. And then they go down the pathways through like the kidneys, the skin, the lymph, and the gut, say, and yeah, the gut. So we've got to actually release them first, then bind them, make sure they're getting out of the body. So yes, charcoal can be used for that. It's a lot better probably though. In the detox program, one of the powders contains a really good amount of prebiotic fibers. So it's stimulating like through the liver, but it's also got the fibers to bind the toxins out of the gut and help the bowels eliminate more. So that's the other thing too, is charcoal can be a bit constipating. It can bind your other minerals too. So that's what you got to be careful of, is just taking it like a couple of hours away from when you're eating anything. Yes, so they're the main questions. Thank you, everyone. I did want to just quickly leave you with something, just if you were interested in this 2-week health reset. I'll just show you where to go. I'll put the link to my website in the comments as well after this is finished, but I will also just quickly share, then you'll know where to go. Okay, we'll open this up for you. Yes, so essentially, if you go to my website, it's going to take you to this sort of area of just if you want to find out more about it. So it's going to give you just some ideas there that it might be beneficial for you if you're experiencing any of these things. This is what you could sort of get, you know, by doing the program, who maybe is at 4. What else we've got? So this is sort of, I guess, the whole purpose of the health reset. It's to clear the mud off the windscreen, like I said, get a clearer view of where your health is at and accelerate you getting on that path to achieving optimal health. That's just explaining what it is. Yes, so I'll tell you what it is. So basically it runs for 2 weeks. It's set up in a Facebook community group. So we've got that support, that extra support, that accountability, you know, connecting with like-minded people, sharing tips, you know, sharing what you're doing. I'm going to have a checklist, you know, that you can do daily, so we can sort of tick it off, you know, the things that we can get in the habit, those healthy habits to reset. I'll be jumping on and giving you a couple of videos of, you know, some learnings and how to implement things. And then I'll answer people's questions sort of coming up to the end of the week, like maybe a Thursday. You've got access to me over that entire time too. So if you need to shoot me a question about your diet, about anything, about how you're reacting to the supplements, about different ways to take the supplements, you can contact me. Obviously, you know, I will get back to you, you know, when I can, but I'll try and sort of do it in that window of like 9 to 5 on most days. We've got a juice fast that's optional in the middle part. So it's not suitable for everybody to do that, but that's a really nice thing. And because the 2-week program is set up in a way that you're already preparing for a juice cleanse, a lot of people will do a cleanse and it's just not done in a really ideal way. And it puts their body into like a healing crisis. You know, we used to think, oh, you know, these detox symptoms, oh, that's good. That's a good thing. You know, it's a healing crisis, but it's not. It's actually just a sign that your system is inflamed. So we want to go gently. So we're really preparing in the lead up to the juice fast. And then when we come off a juice fast, we're preparing in the week post as well, so you don't get sick afterwards. So I've also done for you like a full meal plan for that 2 weeks with a recipe booklet. I will include extra recipes for if you're vegan. We're going to have that daily checklist, and I'm going to pop in a herbal tea. So those supplements also that are the formulas that we're going to use, I'm going to be express posting them out to you. So we're going to start the program on the 19th of September, but if we can have maybe a cutoff, if you can let me know if you're interested by the 12th, because then I'll need to post them out to you. You want to have them in preparation. You want to have the meal plan in prep. You want to have the recipes so you can do your shopping maybe the weekend, you know, the Saturday or Sunday prior to us starting on the Monday. So you're already prepared for it. So yeah, if you can let me know that would be amazing. I do have only limited spots. I've got a few gone already, and because I've got a limited amount of the formulas to use as well. So pretty much it's who is it for, who it's not for. Have a read of that to see if you're, you know, if you kind of tick those boxes. Obviously not if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. I am breastfeeding, so I won't be participating in all aspects of this. I won't be taking the formulas. I won't be doing a juice fast. I'll be eating really cleanly with you though. So yes, we'll all be in it together still. So anyway, that is kind of my my class. It was a bit of a big ramble. Hope you're not too overwhelmed, but what I would suggest is just focus on the things you can control and focus on just one thing at a time, even just one thing for the moment. You know, if you can change just one thing, if you got something out of this talk, change one thing. Let me know in the comments what that is as well. Like what really grabbed you about what you learned about today. That would be amazing. So I will, I'll finish up. And it was, really exciting to talk to you. And hope I get to interact with you more. I'll see you later.